Welcome once again to Daily Life Connection. Thanks for joining us again today. We've begun talking about paths that lead us to God, or vehicles that transport us to the presence of God, or other people call them spiritual disciplines. And today we're going to talk about silence, which seems a little odd to say we're going to talk about silence. But the reality is, if I just go silent here for the next 4 or 5 minutes, probably most of you won't finish watching it because we kind of would feel like there's nothing to learn here. He's just going to sit in silence. And I think that's one of the issues that we have in our spiritual lives. One of the reasons we don't value silence as a spiritual discipline is because in our culture, we feel like there isn't much to. If you're not hearing something, you're not learning. And that just isn't true. The reality is, in Jesus' day, silence was much easier to achieve. There was no media, phones, and TVs, and all of the noise that we have all day long. Even, just jets going overhead and cars driving by and lawnmowers in the neighbor's yard. We live in a society, in a culture where we are saturated with noise. And the reality is, noise is draining. Noise, we know that if you're in a very noisy environment, it can be very tiring, very draining. And yet we live in a fishbowl full of noise most of our days. So silence is a wonderful opportunity to let the mind rest. Because, you see, as I'm listening to music, or I'm reading something on the screen, or I'm, attending a lecture, or whatever it may be, or having a conversation with a friend, I'm constantly processing all of that. I'm taking it all in. I'm formulating my responses. I'm thinking about how to behave and what difference it makes and how long it goes, and I've got an appointment, and we are constantly processing whatever we are hearing. And so the idea of silence is that it really allows our minds to rest. And we need that. Now I know, you can say, well, I sleep all night and there's silence, and that's true, but it's an unconscious silence. What we're talking about, is a conscious silence. It's not the absence of all noise, but it's the absence of all human-generated noise. Big difference. So I can take a walk along the beach, and the waves are crashing on the beach, and the seagulls are screeching, but those are natural noises. They aren't noises that we have to process. The noises of nature, whether it's bird song or the water rippling in a brook, whatever it may be, the wind rustling in the poplar leaves, those are all soothing, mind-renewing, mind-restoring, energy-restoring kinds of sounds. It's human sounds, human-produced sounds, that wear us out and tire us and overload us. So we're talking about not the absence of noise, but the absence of human-generated noise. Taking time to just be silent. Finding a place, whether it's like, I'd say, the back deck, but oftentimes there's kids yelling and lawnmowers going and cars in the distance or whatever it may be. But find a place where we can just shut down human-generated noise. It may be a room in your house where you just close the doors. We are so unused to silence. It can be very uncomfortable for us. And I wonder, why are we so uncomfortable in silence? Is it because we hear our own thoughts? Our own feelings rise up within us, and boy, sometimes they're not beautiful and lovely. Sometimes turmoil, anxiety bubbles up within us. And so we plug in the earphones and turn up the music, because it keeps us from hearing our own inner thoughts and from hearing God's thoughts to us. It says, was Elijah who listened for God in the whirlwind and in the thunderstorm and the fire. But it was said and it was the hush and the silence, he heard a still small voice. I really believe there is a lot of richness to be found in just being silent before the Lord. Just taking time to just say, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to pray anything. I'm not going to sing any songs. I'm just going to be here and enjoy. You know, there's a wonderful scene in The Shack that I think exemplifies this. And it's when Mac and Jesus go out on the dock in the night, and they lay down on the dock and just look at the stars, and no one speaks. They're just there. And in that silence, there is a wonderful sense of God's presence. I really want to encourage us to do this because I really believe we miss a facet of God's presence, a facet of his heart. You know, like if you have a diamond and you have all these little angles on it that reflect the light, they're called facets. And silence is like one of those facets. And if we never turn it in that place, we never see that particular sparkle of God. Silence helps us experience a dimension of God, a sparkle of God that we don't in any other way. So I would encourage you to try it. You know, I think the reality is when we first begin to try it, it sometimes feels very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. Because we're feeling we're not being productive and we're not getting things done. And that's okay. We just need to stop sometimes and quiet our minds, quiet our hearts, quiet our physical hearing, and shut down human-generated sound and listen for the still small voice of God. I really encourage us because I know it will be worth it. But it may take some time. It may take some time. The first time you try it, you might not find it particularly beneficial, but I believe you will. Silence, one of the spiritual disciplines. Let's think about it, let's try it, and we'll talk again tomorrow.